Building a family can be a complicated, messy, lonely, and sometimes heartbreaking process. But you don't have to navigate this challenging journey alone.
Welcome to the AllPaths podcast, where we support and celebrate all of the different ways there are to grow your family. We are your hosts, Kate and Emily from the nonprofit organization AllPaths Family Building. And today we're talking with our friend Amanda about her journey. Amanda, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Well, we are excited too. So before we get into your family building journey in more detail, we'd love for you to introduce yourself for our listeners.
Sure. I'm Amanda Nordberg. I live on the New Hampshire seacoast. I grew up in Connecticut. Live here with my husband, Andy, our 3.5-year-old son, Miles, our 9-month-old daughter, Zoe, our dog, Lola. And I have been a walk volunteer with AllPaths for, this will be my 3rd walk this coming October. So I've been with you guys for a little bit.
That's wonderful. And we are very lucky to know you, but we're excited for our larger community to get to know you today as well. So, can you tell us a bit about your journey to starting your family? Where did it all begin?
Sure. It was 2020 because, why not? Let's pick a scary year. So, my husband and I thought, all right, now it's time to have kids. So let's try and get pregnant. And in our long journey that we had, I've discovered that my body is great at getting pregnant. It does not like to stay pregnant. So I'm like, joking. I don't know what's going on in there. Like, did somebody give it a 1-star rating? Nobody wants to stick around. Like, is it dusty? Like, what's going on? So got pregnant, I think our 2nd month of trying. It was September 2020. Things were great, seemed normal. Went in for an initial ultrasound. I think it was like 6 weeks-ish. A little early, but things looked good. So they wanted me to come back the next week. Fine, I did. Had another ultrasound. Things were still cruising along, looking great. So I'm like, oh, look at this. It's easy. Why was I worried? Because I'm always worried about things, even if I haven't experienced them, right? So went in for my 10-week appointment, which is where you're supposed to do, the first Doppler where they find the heart rate, which is kind of crazy because it's just so tiny in there. So it's hard to find anyway. But so did that. And they had said, oh, we can't really find it, but that's okay. Things are still small. We'll put you in for a quick ultrasound. But, in my appointment with my doctor, they had given me the genetic testing and all the things that I would do, going forward. So went into an ultrasound and thought, okay, this will be fine. Oh, and because it was 2020, my husband was not with me for the appointment. He could come to ultrasounds, but couldn't come to regular doctor's appointments. And since this was technically a regular appointment that then became an ultrasound, he wasn't there, but I'd figured it's fine. So went in for the ultrasound. And, right away, the tech was like, I'm so sorry, there's no heartbeat. And I was just like shocked, right? I'm like, how is this possible? Things were normal. And, I don't know. I just immediately burst into tears. And I had kind of like a resentment against this woman, which I feel bad because she didn't do anything. But she's like, okay, I'm going to go get the doctor. You can chat with her. So the doctor came in, and luckily it was my favorite OB. And she was very sweet. She's like, this happens randomly. We can do genetic testing, but it's your first loss. So we don't necessarily think you need to because it's probably going to cost a lot of money, which is unfortunate that that's one of the reasons why you wouldn't do it. So I said, okay, I guess we don't need to do any testing. And she said, because it's a miscarriage, your body doesn't really know that it's happened yet. So you can wait it out. You can take a pill and have it happen naturally at home, or we can do a DNC. And she was very honest. She's like, I was 11 weeks, but the baby stopped growing at like 8 weeks. So she said, it could be painful if you do this at home, emotionally and physically. And I said, oh yeah, I just want to pretend like nothing is happening. So I will opt for the DNC route, which I'm very thankful I did. But it was weird. So this was, I think it was a Tuesday, and my DNC was on a Friday. So I then had a few days where you're pregnant, but not which is strange. It was a very strange feeling. So then, of course, leaving the OB's office, I was in like the farthest corner possible and had to walk through, the long hallway and then through their huge waiting room, which who knows who was in the waiting room, but to me, it felt like 540-week pregnant ladies, right? So that was difficult. And then, of course, I had to get in the car and call my husband, called my parents. So it sucked to be by myself. And yeah, I don't even remember what we did those few days waiting for my appointment. But all the nurses and doctors at the hospital were very sweet. They were very sympathetic. And it felt kind of nice to have everything over with. It felt like, okay, we're going to start fresh. Like my body's cleaned out. I don't know. I don't know if that's the right thing to say. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
Oh, that makes total sense because it's a situation where you have no control, but this gives you at least like one little piece of control where you can say like, okay, this has been a horrible experience, but like, here's the end. I'm putting that final like period on that sentence and maybe I can start to heal and move on.
Right, right. It was kind of like, okay, it can't get any worse than this. So at least now we're starting over. Things will get better. So my doctor, did HCG testing to make sure I got back down to 0. And then when I did, which was pretty quickly, she said, okay, you guys are good to try again. And this was November-ish. And I just remember thinking, I ended up telling my colleagues because I was out of work for the rest of the week. They were very kind about it. And, told some of my closest girlfriends. And, everybody was very supportive. And I had thought, it feels like I'm hiding something, not sharing this with people. I don't know. It feels like I had a death in the family and I'm just not telling people. So like I'm somebody who does better talking about things instead of keeping them in. So I said, I need to find my people and talk about this. So I was like, I'm just gonna post it on like a public platform on my Facebook, make it public on my Instagram. And just the number of people who reached out saying, like, oh, this happened to me too. This happened to my mom, my sister, whoever. I was like, man, who doesn't this happen to? So it was really, really nice. And then I had connected with Colleen Lubin, who you both know, about AllPaths. It was Resolve New England then, and had joined her for her pregnancy loss groups that she led, which was really nice to connect to some people too. So that's how I found you all, which was really nice. It's just nice to find people who can understand because, your friends and family are sympathetic and supportive. But the ones who haven't gone through it just don't know. But so after that, then moving forward, we got pregnant again very quickly. And I had been a crazy person with my ovulation testing. And I can't remember why I was testing while I had my period. I don't know. But my tests had said that I was, super ovulating. It was like the darkest line ever. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So I asked my friend, Dr. Google, why is this? And it's like, oh, actually, it means you could be pregnant. I'm like, well, uh-oh, that's not good if I have a lot of bleeding and am pregnant. And then, of course, Google's telling me, well, maybe it's an ectopic pregnancy. And I'm like, that could be. I could be somebody who has one of those. And my husband is like, you spiral about everything. Who knows what it could be? This might not be anything bad. But he's like, you are correct enough in your spirals that it does validate you going down that rabbit hole. So I call my doctor, I do HCG testing. My numbers are going up. They're not doubling, they're going up just a little bit. So they're like, okay, this could be an ectopic. You could be right. So they want me to go in for an ultrasound. They don't have any appointments that day there. So they have to send me to the hospital for an ultrasound. So, when you're at the hospital, the tech's looking and everything, but they can't actually tell you. They've got to wait for the radiologist to confirm. But we were waiting forever because I guess the radiologist didn't think it was ectopic. He thought it was something else. But my OB was fighting with him, like, no, that is, there's a yolk sac there in her fallopian tube. What else is it? So I don't know. I guess they were fighting about that. But yes, it was indeed an ectopic. So my doctor said, well, you're not leaving the hospital till luckily I was, I think about 6 weeks. So I didn't need surgery, but they had to give me the methotrexate shot. which I hadn't realized was essentially a cancer med, like radiation. So she was very sweet. And she said, I would like to bring you up to labor and delivery, but if you're not comfortable going to that floor, that's okay. We can go somewhere else. And I said, no, that's fine. I was kind of nosy, wanted to see what it looked like anyway. And, everything in the hospital takes forever. So again, I'm by myself. I don't really remember why, but um, two nurses come in the room fully gowned up in PPE and hazmat suits, and everything says caution radiation. I'm like, you guys are about to stick that in my body? That's scary. Yeah, so you get 2 shots in your butt and you experience the craziest bloating that I've ever had in my life. I literally felt like a balloon. And they just monitored my HCG numbers. And luckily, they did go down drastically. I didn't need another round of the shots or subsequent surgery or anything. And I think the hardest part with the ectopic is that they said, so since these meds essentially deplete your body of all nutrients, you have to wait 3 months before you can try again. So that was a long 3 months. I think, yeah, it was February, March, April. And it just felt like forever. I mean, you guys know that every month counts and just feels like an eternity. And not even being able to try is hard. So then it was May and we could try again. And again, got pregnant. But, and I was cuckoo taking pregnancy tests every day. So I could compare the lines, make sure they were getting darker. But these didn't. They kind of immediately disappeared. I was like, okay, well, I guess that's a chemical pregnancy, right? And by that point, I'm like, that's it. There's no way my body's going to actually have a baby. It gets pregnant, but it doesn't stay pregnant. So we reached out to Boston IVF, who were fabulous humans. We met with Dr. Lannon, super nice guy. And well, I guess I'll back up. Before meeting with them, our appointment, I think, was scheduled for like a month out. So in June of 2021. And my husband and I were on vacation. We're like, okay, we have this appointment. I guess we'll do it while we're on vacation. It's fine, whatever. At least we'll chat with them and get a sense of, what they think might be going on. And so we were still trying on our own. I did get pregnant again, but the lines were like kind of light again. So I'm like, oh, this is definitely a chemical again. Like we'll see. We'll still chat with them. And even he was like, yeah, it could be another chemical. We'll do some numbers. So I did some blood work and my numbers were kind of low and slow, as they called them, but we were just going to keep an eye on them. But then I don't know what happened, but my body liked this embryo for some reason. So it ended up being my son Miles, which was great. But, actually going through a full term pregnancy after loss is really hard. I mean, you kind of mourn the loss of excitement about pregnancy. And I think that's sort of one of the differences between, those I know who struggle with infertility versus loss is, you know, we kind of dread seeing the positive pregnancy test. We're like, oh God, what does this mean? It's going to be bad. So each week you're like, okay, you hit a new milestone, right? I get excited for each new ultrasound or trimester or whatever it is. The anatomy scan was a huge one for us. It just felt like everything was scary.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think that's something people do not understand because it's like, because even when you're going through it, it's hard to reconcile both emotions. It's like what you want and fear most at the same time. And that is so hard. And it is unfair that the joy of that time, I mean, it obviously can be, pregnancy can be such a challenging time on multiple levels, but typically for a wanted pregnancy, there is aspects of joy. And it takes so much of the joy away, if not all of the joy, when you're so afraid of the other shoe dropping and having loss. And I mean, you really unfortunately became knowledgeable about the different types of loss from going through them. It was like you were basically checking them off, like, and which is so hard to, it's always hard when you're the type of person, including myself, who spirals about things and then it happens to be right. And so it's so
Mm-hmm.
like kind of validating. Like I was afraid for a reason because it was an ectopic pregnancy or it was a chemical pregnancy. I was not making this up. Obviously Dr. Google can be our enemy sometimes, but when it's right, sometimes you're kind of like, well, that was why I was worried. So were you able to find support during that time after conceiving Miles and that pregnancy was progressing? Were you able to find some support around the stress of pregnancy after loss?
I was, I had found some groups, um, just some random Facebook groups even
Mhm.
too, which actually it's funny. So a lot of those groups were helpful for me while struggling with my losses, and validating that this was happening to other people. But then some of their stories, I'm like, I can't listen to this actually while I am pregnant. I needed to just be in la la land and say, no, nothing bad happens to anybody. Um, so nice just talking, I've had a couple girlfriends go through loss too. So talking with them about just how you go on each day, right? Do I keep busy? What do I do? Do I kind of pretend that I'm not pregnant? Like what's the best way to manage it? And I think for me, just keeping as busy as possible and trying to remind myself that this is a brand new pregnancy. Whatever happened to me before doesn't mean it's going to happen again. And, statistically, I'm this far along, so I only have a whatever percent chance of this happening. But of course, I had calculated with my first pregnancy that I only had like a 4% chance of having a miscarriage, and I did. So I was like, actually, those stats don't help me at all. And the pregnancy loss support group too that you guys run was just great. It's just nice talking to other people about it who've been through it and just sharing your fears. I remember in we took a childbirth class once I was much farther along with the hospital, on Zoom, and we were all sharing our fears of childbirth and labor and all of that. And people had said, the pain and what, different things that were all valid. But mine, I was like, death, me dying, the baby dying, this not actually happening. I'm like, I don't know why mine's a lot darker than everybody else's, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I'm sure, like, again, I just believe there were other people in that Zoom who maybe wanted to say that, but didn't. And I mean, frankly, we love many things about you, but we love your dark humor and your willingness to make light of it because sometimes like we have to make light of it sometimes but also obviously that fear was very real. Like you'd been through it. So, and again, I'm sure you weren't the only one feeling that way. You just might have been the only one who said it. And I feel like that helps people so much when you say the thing that they aren't saying. So, but you're like, oh, I just took this to a dark place.
right,
No,
right.
but so relatable. I had the same
Yeah.
experience where I was like, I'm surrounded by all these people who are like sunshine and roses, and we can't wait to welcome our baby Earthside. And I was like, Jesus Christ, we have nothing in common.
We
I don't
need
want to say
wait,
anything with
we need to have like the real people's childbirth
hmm.
class with like real talk.
Honestly,
Yeah.
right? I was like,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
do whatever you need me to do as long as we're both alive on the other end.
Well, you're so used to the worst case scenario happening that you're just like, okay, what's the next worst case scenario that's going to happen?
Right, right. And luckily my labor with him was actually great. So, you know, I got a little perk
Awesome.
at the end. But yeah, then even, getting pregnant with my daughter, which luckily was, didn't have any of the drama. So I feel very thankful for that, but still had all of the same anxieties as I had with my son, even though I knew, okay, you have successfully carried a baby to full term and had him and he's healthy and he's now 3. But it still doesn't go away. You're still just as nervous as you were the first time, which is very frustrating. I'm like, I wish I were one of those people who had no issues and was just so blissfully happy about pregnancy. But I do not enjoy pregnancy because not even the physical toll it has on my body, that's fine. It's the mental piece that really gets me. It's just too stressful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In addition to like the Facebook groups, the pregnancy loss group, were there any other supports that kind of helped manage those anxieties during either of your pregnancies? Were there things you wish you had tried?
Definitely my therapist and Lexapro. Those are great.
Absolutely.
Very, very helpful. And really, honestly, reading Emily Oster's book, I'll give her a shout out because I love her, Expecting Better. It's just full of statistics and real facts so you don't spiral on Google. That I found that very helpful. And then just talking with more and more people in the loss and fertility space about what they've gone through and knowing, okay, I'm not alone in this. It affects, 1 in 4 pregnancies are lost, and I think it's 1 in 6 people with infertility. So it's certainly not just me and my husband. And knowing that the majority of these people do go on to have, a family of sorts, however it looks, is great. Right. Needed to remind myself of that, but it's hard in the moment to do that.
It absolutely is. I just want to say too that, you know, we get the question sometimes sort of like from people like, is all paths for me? Because, like in this case, they might say like, I don't have trouble conceiving. I don't necessarily have infertility in the traditional sense of the word as I understand it, but I'm no closer to my goal of a healthy live birth because I have had a loss or multiple losses. And as you know, our answer is almost always yes, you are welcome here because we try to provide support and information for anyone that is struggling to grow their family. And that can sometimes be trouble conceiving, and it can sometimes be trouble sustaining a pregnancy, as you said. So I just want to say that, obviously you highlight in a really powerful way that you are very welcome here, and anyone struggling is welcome here, no matter what that looks like for them. So how did you kind of build up the courage and the other things that you need to try to further grow your family and welcome a second child?
That's a great question. I know we wanted 2 children was the, the hope. And I think it was just like, all right, if we don't do it now, we're never going to do it. And the older my son got, it's like, okay, ideally, like you want a certain age gap, but you can't plan that. And so we're like, well, we might as well try now because who knows what's going to happen. So let's just do it, kind of get it over with. Which I don't know if that's the best way, but um, and then luckily she kind of stuck immediately, which was great. I think my body maybe learned how to do it. So yeah. It just
That's
perhaps
great.
out of fear is how we did it.
That works. Hey, whatever gets you there. And so you did not have to do IVF to have her.
We did not. Nope.
Oh, that's just great. So you had that consult, but and in the end, you ended up not needing IVF.
Right. And
Yeah, which
what's
is great.
funny is I ended up running into Dr. Lannon when I was super pregnant with her. And I was like, you know what? Am I going to be weird if I approach him and say, hi, I had a consult with you way back when, but didn't end up meeting you? But I did. And he was very sweet. He's like, we love when people don't need us. Like, that is fantastic. I'm so happy that you're, due any second now and you have an older child. It was very sweet.
Exactly. Yeah. I think as you were saying that, I was like, oh, I hope you did. Cause I think he particularly, I think would love to talk to you. And yeah, I think in general, obviously they don't want you to need them. They just want to be there for you if you do, but, they're happy, when it works out and you don't need that assistance. So that's great.
Totally. Yeah. And I know earlier you had said, when you feel sort of like, am I welcome in these spaces? Right. Knowing that I actually was able to get pregnant naturally. I didn't need any sort of assistance. Kind of felt like, oh, well, I didn't have it as bad as other people, or, I can get pregnant. I had sort of the like, do I belong here? Well, it wasn't as bad as this situation or that situation. And, people remind me it's not the grief Olympics. You're not competing to have the worst situation out there. You're all welcome. And I've certainly learned that with you all, which is great. It's nice to find a space where everybody's welcome and it doesn't matter what you went through. It's just that we've all gone through shit and we're all here to support each other.
Yeah. Amen. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think Grief Olympics is one of my favorite phrases.
Totally.
Because
Say,
it is. It's so I don't understand where this like imposter complex comes from, but we see it all the time in so many different groups. From like, do I do I talk about what I've been through? Because it's not as bad as this person that just shared their story. Like it's still the worst thing that happened to you. It doesn't matter
Right.
how it stacks up against the worst things that have happened to other people.
Exactly.
right. 'Cause-
And it's not like any of us are saying, this is the worst thing that ever happened to anyone ever. I mean, if
Right.
someone said that, I'd be like, no, you know, but no one's saying that. They're just saying this was one of my biggest struggles in my life. And then for those that have had similar ones, you instantly feel a connection.
Totally.
So it's all that. It's so valid.
No one's comparing. Everyone's just there to commiserate and to hold each other in that space.
Exactly.
Whatever shitty thing has happened to you, you're all in that spot together.
I,
Exactly.
I know. I even had, once I was finally, officially pregnant with Miles, which whatever that means, I also felt sort of guilty, with talking with people who were still going through it. Like, I'm so sorry that I've, gone on to the next step. I felt bad that I did.
I know. That's real too. I mean, and we can't help the way we feel, but that sensitivity for the other people still in the trenches is a good characteristic that you have. You know what I mean? So it's like, to me, it is what it is. You feel a certain way, they feel a certain way, but they want you to be happy too, and they're happy for you. So it's all interconnected. I was really struck when you were saying, and I love that you did this. And obviously, I don't judge people when they don't do this, but I really appreciate that you shared, your first loss on your social media. And I am a big believer that, like, when you open that door, people then know they can walk through it, which certainly sounds like it was your experience in doing that. And I think there's some people, again, who kind of say, like, oh, you're young, or that was just your first loss. And was it even, but it's like when you're excited to be pregnant and then it ends, and especially with you being alone in that ultrasound appointment, and then, I can just really feel in my bones like that, remember that experience of just like walking through the waiting room and being like, oh, I'm not like one of you. And so much of what you said, I unfortunately can relate to personally, but I really applaud you for sharing your story. And I think you really helped people by doing that, clearly, because then, and it helped you too, because then they came out of the woodwork and said, I had a loss too. I had a loss too. Um, so, I mean, what you talked about it a little bit, but why do you think you kind of felt like you wanted to share it?
Yeah, I think, my mom had experienced a miscarriage too around the same time in her pregnancy as I did. So we were able to chat about it together and just talking about the stigma of like, why do people hide this? It's a loss. It's like, you don't hide when your grandmother dies. It just feels so strange. And it really affects you just moving forward in life. And I was like, well, how do I just go on being a normal person, not sharing this huge thing that happened to me? And especially when I hadn't mentioned this in the story, but the weekend before that ultrasound where I found out, we were at a friend's wedding where we shared with a bunch of our friends that we were pregnant. Cause I'm like, I'm almost 11 weeks. Nothing bad'll happen to me. So I'm like, gosh, I've shared with all these people. So I should obviously share the bad news with them. I'm like, no, I want others who've been through this, who feel that they aren't comfortable sharing for whatever reason, um, or even if they're just scared to share it, or even if they don't want to, it doesn't matter. I'm not
Mhm.
judging.
Yeah.
Just knowing that this is affecting somebody else. You're not alone in it. I'm here, and then I went on to share my subsequent losses too. Just kind of wanted to connect people however I could, and just knowing if I could help, even one person feel seen or heard, then I would feel, like, okay, I did the right thing.
Mhm.
And it really felt like, a weight was lifted when I shared it. I'm like, oh, okay. I feel relief. I finally told people what's happening to me. I don't know. So I knew immediately, like, okay, this was the thing I needed to do. And just talking about it openly, which sometimes I'm like, do I talk about it too openly? Am I just sharing this with random people in the grocery store? Like, hey, this is my fifth pregnancy, but I only had two children. I, I don't know, but I don't think being too candid about it's a bad thing.
Definitely not.
No, definitely not. Well, obviously we're supporters of that, but
We're not the people to ask maybe for an objective
yeah,
opinion, but
yeah. And like I said, I mean, I truly don't judge. Like, I remember when Michelle and Barack Obama shared that they had gone through IVF, after his pregnancy, after his pregnancy, after his presidency was over. I remember a lot of people were so upset. They were like, why didn't you share this while you were president? Why didn't you do more to help with, and I really didn't feel that way. Like I felt like they shared it in their time when they felt ready to share it. And so I just feel that way in general, that it is your story to share if and when you ever want to. But that said, I do love obviously people like you that are so transparent and sometimes, like I said, find maybe even a humorous way to say it, but it still raises the conversation. And I also think it helps sometimes when you are candid with people that they maybe rethink that as a grocery store question, like, because I know when people have, asked people like, is this your first pregnancy? And they're excited for you and they're trying to connect with you, they're trying to relate to you. But it's also like, that is actually a really complex question. And you can probably
Mhm.
think of a better grocery store question, like even just how are you feeling? Or, something like that's also kind and well-meaning, but not so complicated. And I think sometimes if you haven't gone through loss, you don't think of it as a complicated question. But how many people literally still get upset when they have to answer that question on their pre-visit questionnaire at the, like how many pregnancies have you had? How many live births have you had? That's like, I know a lot of people for whom that is still not a straightforward question. So
Totally.
you shouldn't be asking it over like the mangoes at the
Right.
grocery store either.
Right.
And if you're
Exactly.
gonna, then you might get an answer that's like, well, it's my second baby, or whatever, but it's my fifth pregnancy, but I only have one child and this is the second one on the way. They might
Right.
get more
Yeah.
more answer than they expected.
Yes. Which I never know how to answer. I think I go back and forth and they're like, okay, crazy lady. Walk away.
Yeah, yeah.
well, it sets off this whole like choose your own adventure story in your head. You're like, if I
I
answered
know.
this way, am I really prepared emotionally to have this conversation today? Do
I
I give the like
know.
pat answer that people are expecting? Like, it's this
Yeah.
all little diagram.
So true. So true.
But I think to your point about, maybe you're oversharing, I think like Kate was saying, you don't ever have to share your story. But if you choose to, I think we're only normalizing the conversation around last so that hopefully down the line, when people are choosing to share their story, it's because they want to. And because when people aren't choosing to share their story, it's because they want to, not that they feel like they shouldn't or they can't or that it's stigmatized in some way. It's an actual real choice that they are making for themselves instead of saying like, oh, I can't because I'm not 12 weeks along. So I shouldn't even share that I'm
Mhm.
pregnant, or I can't share that I had this loss because that's just something like we don't talk about. The people who are willing to talk about their experience, they're helping create a space where it is a legitimate choice that someone makes for their own family, their own like mental, emotional well-being versus saying, I might want to talk about this, but I feel like I'm not able to, or I'm not allowed to.
Right. Right. I just want it to be a normal thing to talk about if you want to. And even
Yeah.
sharing when you're pregnant, right? I told like my two best girlfriends right away, and my parents too, and my husband's parents. And it was just kind of like, well, these are the people I would tell if something bad happened. So why wouldn't I tell them that I'm pregnant? Which then we did
100%.
have to tell them that bad things happened. But
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Well, so you mentioned in your introduction that you've been involved in our walk, Footsteps for Family Building. And so, and obviously had been part of our support groups as well, which we're so glad about. I feel like our groups are the heart of our mission. So, can you share a little bit about how you learned about the walk and what your experience with the walk has been?
totally. Again, I'll plug our pal Colleen. She's the one who introduced me to it. And
She's
it's
the
a
best.
blast. She is the best. So I was there in person my first year, and then my second year, I was I think amidst giving birth to my daughter. So
You had the best reason to walk virtually that year.
I don't know if I virtually walked, but I virtually exerted calories.
100%. You participated virtually. That's all we need to say.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's the camaraderie around like all the things that we've been through, and has a more celebratory feeling to it, right? Which is nice. We're all getting together to support, this great organization and raising money for it. Especially in this political climate, it's even more important to spread awareness around infertility and loss and just the advocacy for family building. So it's just been a lot of fun. It's a great group. You both are just a blast to work with. I'm
Oh,
excited to be
thanks.
there in person again this year and
Yay.
bring the kiddos, which will be fun. Yeah.
We're excited to see you.
Yeah, we can't wait. It'll be so fun. Well, virtual is so awesome. I mean, we love that people have the opportunity to be virtual participants from wherever they are and whatever they're doing. They sign up the same way, but they are participating from wherever we are and wherever they are. And we enjoy seeing like their posts about where they're walking and where they live and all those kind of things. But obviously, selfishly, we love seeing people at the walk in Ashland, Massachusetts, because it becomes like a reunion for us where we get to like see people in person, because so much is virtual now, which is wonderful in so many ways. But we just really truly love the people in our community, and so we love to see them in person. So it'll be fun to see your family.
Me too. I'm excited.
And I think you're right. It is a celebration, and not just for the people who might be like on the other side and say like, I attended groups in the past, but now I'm back with my family. I'm celebrating that, we made it to this endpoint. But even just to celebrate how far you've come if you're still in the midst of your journey. Like we're saying, this isn't something that you generally talk about, or you might talk about with a core group of people who are supporting you. So you don't get to necessarily celebrate the small wins that happen along the way. Like, hey, we got matched with a birth parent, or hey, we just did an egg retrieval and it went really well. You don't have the chance to talk about those little wins that happen along the way. And this is a chance to get together with people who actually understand how exciting those moments are.
Totally. I know. I remember at the first walk that I was at, I won't say her name, but you guys probably know. She was on the walk committee with us and had been struggling for I think 10 years with infertility, and she had told some of us that she was very newly pregnant, which was exciting, and she's gone on to have a son. He's adorable. And I just remember thinking like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Like it was just, that was a huge step for her, and it obviously all worked out, which is fantastic. But yeah, I still remember that.
Definitely. Absolutely.
It's a very cute kiddo.
Yes, he is.
I got to hold him.
Still very jealous about that.
We had a moment, and I'm grateful for it. It's a perk of my job. So I'll take it.
That is a good perk.
One of many. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for coming and sharing your story with everyone. Before we wrap up, there are two questions that we like to get everybody's thoughts on. I know you've listened to the show before, so these aren't going to be a surprise. But the first question that we like to ask everybody is, what is one thing that you would say to someone who is just starting to grow their family? And then the other side of that is, what's one thing you wish people would stop saying when someone shares with them that they are struggling to build their family?
Totally. I think I probably have two things that I hope that, people will sort of take advantage of in their family building journey. Kind of what I did. One is finding your people, right? As you're starting this, or, if you're already experiencing infertility and loss, it's so important to find, whoever it is for you, whether it's your family, friends, an organization like AllPaths, or I should just say, you should find AllPaths. And connect with them. And one of their many groups that they have, just so you can connect with others going through what you're going through. And then giving yourself grace throughout the process, I think. And if you have to step away from whether it's a baby shower or something, when you see people posting on social media that they're pregnant, it's okay to be angry about it. I struggled with a lot of that, right? Like, oh, I'm jealous. I'm happy for this person, but I'm jealous and I'm mad that I'm seeing this, which is a very complex, strange feeling to have. But, knowing that that's okay to do. So I would say those two things. And then I think sort of tying that into what I wish people wouldn't say is, I guess sort of a roundabout answer to that is when you are announcing your pregnancy to a friend or family member or colleague who you know is struggling with infertility and loss, which sometimes you don't know. I think it's really important to not share that in person with them. And I know a lot of people don't know that, which is why I like to share that sort of PSA, because it can be hard to receive that information. And that person's initial response, they could be upset, but they're obviously not going to show that they're upset. So it's going to be weird for them to take in. It might feel like a gut punch. So it's better to share over text with them, which could feel strange. You're like, why am I texting my best friend this important news? But, it allows them to have the genuine response that they're going to have for it. And they will be happy for you. But I think they'll also be sad for themselves.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that so much. I mean, and it's such great advice. I don't think actually we've asked this question, obviously, every episode. I don't think someone has said that yet, specifically in answer to that question. And I think it's actually the kindest, most generous way you can do it. And the person will not be like, oh, this was so impersonal that you did it this way. They're going to be like, thank you so much for letting me just cope with it in my own time. And then by the time I see you, I'll be able to rally, like, even if it's a little bit, that's always hard, but it's not as hard as having it sprung on you. I mean, I had a friend whose sister-in-law announced it like on Mother's Day, like at Mother's Day brunch, and not trying to be mean in any way, but she knew they were struggling. And it's like, Mother's Day is already so hard.
I know, that's a double whammy.
Yeah. So it was like, oh God, no.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people just don't know, which, people are trying to do the right thing. I don't think people are being evil by sharing it in person, but I think it's a good little tidbit for people to know.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. And I do feel like we need to give Colleen a shout out because she's been mentioned a couple of times.
We do.
Colleen is awesome. Look for her episode on the podcast coming later this summer. Yeah, she is wonderful. If you've had the opportunity to get to know her through one of the groups that she led for us, or when she was a walk co-chair for a couple of years, she kicks ass. So we owe her a huge thank you, not only for all of that, but for bringing you to the AllPaths family. It's been wonderful having you be a part of our community, and we're really looking forward to seeing you and your family in October.
Absolutely.
I agree. I'm excited to continue working with you all. Yeah, this has been a blast. Thanks for having me.
And if anybody listening wants to join the walk, please do come hang with us. You can visit our website for more info and to register. We would love to celebrate wherever you are in your family building journey with you.
We hope you'll join us next time for more family building stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to make sure you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at AllPaths FB, or visit our website, allpathsfb.org, for more information about our work. AllPaths Family Building is so grateful to the members of our circle of support who are vital to our ability to provide emotional support, education, and advocacy that is open to anyone struggling to grow their families. Today, we want to give a special shout out to our gold sponsor, Ferring Pharmaceuticals. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please help spread the word so that anyone who is struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. It's an honor to walk with you on your family building journey.